Right, I want to talk to you this evening about my Pilot Road 4 tyres. I've had them now for just over a year, and I've probably done close to about, say, 7,000, 8,000 miles with them now. And the tread is pretty good, but there's some good things and some bad things about the tyre, and I'd like to go through some of those things in this video. The good things I can say about the tyre is that the wet weather performance of the tyre is really good, and also cold weather riding during winter is very good. Actually quite surprised how the tyre actually warms up during a cold winter's ride, and how sticky the tyre actually feels on a cold day, which is great during that time of year. That's when you need it, when it's cold and wet and the roads are a bit slippy and greasy. They're a good tyre and I can't fault them. The problem is during the warm weather, the really hot weather, and what I found with the tyre is that it becomes in a way too soft and too sticky for what the tread's like. Now you get some of these sports bike tyres that have very minimal grooves and more flat surface areas, and the reason for that is so that there's more rubber on the road. Because your bike tyre has only got a very small little patch that is sticking you to the road, you want as most of that rubber to be in contact with the road surface. And if some of your tyre is being taken up by grooves for the displacement of water, then that area of tyre is not then in contact with the road. Also, the problems are that the tyre can flex. More grooves, and the larger grooves that you have on a tyre, more tyre has got the ability to just squiggle about a little bit. That can make for a very uncomfortable feeling under you when you're riding. And what you want is a fairly good stiff tyre, stick to the road, and with stand the pressures of putting them into a lean. Gonna have to wait. He's gonna go round a blind bit of bend. It's double whites and that for a reason. Anyway, saying about the tyres squiggling around because of the grooves. Yeah, so grooves can be really good for displacing all the water, but when you're wanting a decent bit of rubber to be in contact with the road, it's not that great. Right, I was saying about squiggling with because of the grooves. Because of the grooves, it's allowing this flexibility, and that can pull at the tyre. It can cause the tyre to be under much greater stress than what it would do without grooves if you had a tyre with a much larger surface area to road. And when they get really hot, the rubber can get more flexible, so that twisting about and pulling on the tyre becomes even more. So the tyre's taking even more pull, even more stress than what it will do when it's colder, and you get to kind of a plateau with the tyre. But once it gets beyond like a certain temperature with that particular compound, it will start just degrading, and bits of the tyre will start peeling off and rolling off. And that's what you sometimes see if you do a track day on a tyre. You would start feeling that the tyres start just beginning to degrade on the surface, so it has all these fine little bits left all over the tyre. And that's when the performance of the tyre has hit its limit and is literally being torn apart. And a lot of people have gone on like track days and ridden around perfectly fine, been getting the knee down, having fun, and then near the end of the day their tyres have got incredibly hot, incredibly stressed. They're still racing around, if not racing fast around the track, because they've gained some level of confidence during the day and feel that they can take the bike a little bit more than what they would have done when they first set off. And then so the tyre has got over hot, the compounds are not working as what they should do, the tyre is literally being ripped apart, and you're left with all this breaking apart bits of tyre that are left over the surface of your tyre that then ends up causing people to have an accident and fall off. They're chipping all up here now. probably. I think they're going to be doing all chipping up that road to Ipswich. Anyway, I'm talking about the Pilot Road 4s. Now the compound I think on this tyre, as I say, suits wet weather, also cooler temperatures, and over winter. And it's a brilliant tyre, a really grippy tyre, gives great confidence in that time. But in the temperature that we've had, where it's been like 30 degrees, 35 degrees, the road temperature is going to be a heck of a lot hotter than that. And the road temperature can actually be hot enough to cook an egg on. If you've ever put your hand on the hot tarmac during a really hot day, you can't leave your hand there for a few seconds without scalding your hand. And that heat, and you're confident riding thinking it's such a lovely summer's day, and you're bursting it round the bends and putting all that strain and pressure on the tyres, ends up starting breaking these type of tyres apart. And I think that's what's been happening to my tyre, my Pilot Road 4 tyres. They've kind of been hitting their limit just over the past few days. And there's one cut that has developed in my tyre that has actually shown up. I like pulled it apart, and you can actually see the steel banding thread underneath where the rubber is. I've put a whole load of like silicone sealant all in there, some special sealant that's meant for like doing gaskets and stuff like this for really high temperatures, and shoved the old nozzle right into it and gave it a good old squirt in there to see that it'll just seal it up for the moment to give me a little bit more life out the tyres. But the tread on the tyres, there's plenty of tread left, but the tyres are kind of breaking apart. Now the previous tyre that I had on this bike was a Bridgestone Battle Axe tyre. I first didn't like it because I wasn't A, first used to the bike, and B, the tyre when I got the bike was pretty flattened off, squared off. And if you've ever ridden with a tyre like that, as soon as you start getting it onto a lean and you get it onto the little ridge bit, it feels like the bike just instantly wants to start tipping over, and it starts making you feel a little bit uneasy. Rather than just feeling a natural twist to the bike, you got to this edge where you just felt it like ride over a little thin bump, which basically it is, a thin ridge bump in your tyre that's giving you less surface traction. And it wasn't great, but I managed to get rid of those on the old Suffolk roads, doing a few twisties and throwing it about a bit. That I actually rounded the tyres off. Before then I got a nail in the tyre, which put the end to that. But I actually quite like the Bridgestone Battle Axe, because during hot weather like this, the tyre performed exceptionally well. So that kind of tyre, if you're doing more kind of fair weather riding and you're riding more this time of year, then I'd suggest going for a much harder kind of compound tyre, like one of those Bridgestone Battle Axe tyres, and rather than say like the Pilot Road 4 tyres, because the tyre, it just felt a lot more stiffer tyre and a lot better traction during this time of year. In the wet they weren't that great, but saying that again, I went all the way down to the Ace Cafe in February time in the wet, didn't have any problems off the tyres, they felt okay. Which, when looking back at it, it actually wasn't that bad a tyre, and I can see the reason why people actually quite like the Bridgestone Battle Axe ones. The Pilot Road 4s, they just haven't given me that confidence, because I can just feel the tyres when it's warm weather like this, that they just feel that little bit squiggly. Especially when it gets seriously hot. Look at this flipping rubbish somebody's just thrown out. Dear. What are some people like? That's what really, really annoys me about some people. They just don't care one bit. And they think it's funny. They think it's a laugh. And they think if you have a moan about it, then you're an idiot. No. Anyone that doesn't care for the environment and just litters like that, do you think they're going to care about other people? No. And if they don't care about other people, then What kind of person is that? Ridiculous. Anyway, my confidence with this Pilot Road 4 tyre, as I say, for winter and wet riding, brilliant. This time of year, in the warm, I'm not so confident in it. There's a new tyre that's just been launched, the Michelin Roadtec 01 tyres, and they're looking actually pretty good. Again, you're trying a new tyre, so what are they going to be like? How are they going to perform? You know, we need some people out there on YouTube to be able to actually test them, and test them on different bikes, test them on heavy bikes like this Sprint, see how they perform, and give you feedback on the tyres. So other fellow, look, some more rubbish. Now, I saw a picture of the Pilot Road 4 tyre that had been like delaminated, where the tyre has literally like ripped itself apart. Now, I'm not sure if that one is just a one-off, that someone got a dodgy batch, or they've got a fake tyre. Something like they've got one cheap off eBay thinking it's the original Michelin Pilot Road 4 tyre, and in fact they've actually got some cheap Chinese knockoff. So I'll put the picture up and show you it. I'm just wondering, after my experience now and looking at the tyres and seeing how the rubber's performing on these tyres, that could that actually happen if you really put your bike to the test? If you took your bike with Pilot Road 4s on for a track day, are they going to rip themselves apart? Anyway, that's my opinion on the Pilot Road 4 tyre. If you're going to be doing a lot of commuting in the cold weather and wet weather, then brilliant tyre, I'd highly recommend it. If you're only going to be riding during the summer, and you're one of these people that would prefer just to get your bike out during the summer, then I wouldn't really bother with the Pilot Road 4. I'd go with something more like Bridgestone Battle Axe tyres. So like and subscribe to this video. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, like, comment, all the usual good stuff, and I'll see you again in the next vlog.